Good morning, church family. Pastor Jeff here. Decided to sit outside this morning to do this devotion, and the wind's just starting to pick up a little bit, so hopefully you'll be able to hear this and my pages don't blow away. But hope that you're enjoying this Good Friday morning. It's an interesting Easter weekend that we're about to jump into because of the shelter-in-place order that we're all doing our best, I hope, to follow and help stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus. So I've been thinking about Good Friday. I've been thinking about Easter Sunday. And really, this shelter-in-place provides us with a unique opportunity to really just slow down a little bit and spend some time reflecting this weekend about what God did for us, what Jesus did for us, about Jesus' sacrifice. And so we're going to look this morning, because today is Good Friday, the day that we stop to remember Jesus' death on the cross. And I just want to look at it for a few minutes and just ask the question, how did Jesus get through it? We know Jesus was fully God, but he was also fully man. So in Jesus's humanity, how did he get through this Good Friday? So we know that throughout Jesus' life, the religious leaders constantly were plotting against him. They were constantly trying to trip him up, trying to arrest him several times, trying to discredit him. And so he was under this constant attack throughout his ministry. But here on Good Friday, Jesus finds himself not only attacked by the religious leaders, but he's been abandoned by his disciples. So his closest and followers have left him, and he is alone that way. He's also been rejected by the people. Palm Sunday, we celebrated Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, where everyone was celebrating that here's this possibly our new king, the one going to deliver us. So that from Sunday, where he had just mobs cheering for him and celebrating him, to Saturday, where he's been rejected by the people. But not only that, probably worse than that, he's been arrested. He's been tried and convicted by his own leaders. He's been taken to Pilate, and Pilate's basically said, "Look, you're on your own. I'm not getting into this mess." So he's been left to defend himself by Pilate, and then suffering the torture, the beatings, the scourgings, the humiliation by the Roman soldiers, who were basically professional killers. And so how did Jesus get through all of this? How did he persevere to the end? Because as Christians, we want to be able to say that no matter what life brings us, we were faithful to our Lord to the end. So a couple of verses I want to look at, and the first one's from John chapter 5, verse 19. So this is actually early in Jesus' ministry, and he's talking to his disciples, and he says, in John 5:19, he says, "I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does." So I think this is one of the key things that helped Jesus to persevere through to the end, is that he recognized he doesn't do anything by himself. He does what he sees his Father doing. So Jesus recognized that even as the Son of God, being fully God, he recognized he was not on his own. He always did things in conjunction and with the Father. So if Jesus recognized, man, I don't do anything by myself, only what the Father tells me to do, only what the Father's doing, then that's going to be the first point for us. We have to recognize as believers that we do nothing by ourselves, that God is with us all the time. And that's promises that God's given us in the New Testament. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. And so that's one of the first things I think we need to remember when we're faced with a difficult trial, a difficult situation. We are never by ourselves. God is always with us. A couple other verses, and now these are verses right before Jesus' death, and in 2, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's praying with his disciples just before his arrest. And of course, you know the story. The disciples fall asleep, and Jesus is trying to pray, and he says, can you guys not even stay awake for a few minutes? And then 2 times, Jesus it records Jesus' prayer to the Father. And one of them here is Luke 22, verse 42. He says, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. And Jesus is recorded 2 times that Jesus prayed that prayer. And Jesus was fully submitted to God's will, to the Father's will for his life. And I think that's the second thing that we need to remember if we're facing a difficult situation. So the first thing was, we don't do anything by ourselves. God is always with us. And the second thing is that we need to submit ourselves to God's will. So we need to be able to say to God, this isn't what I would choose, but if this is what you have for me, then I'm willing to go through. I know that you're with me, and I know that you're going to. The recognition that he's with us, and then the willingness to submit to his will for our life. And those are the first 2 things. And we see that's what Jesus did. And I think that these prayers where he said, he admits in one of them, this isn't, please take it from me if it's possible, but if it's not, your will be done. And so that's the second thing. And then the third thing we see, or that I just want to pull out, was from Luke chapter 23, and this is at the very end. So Jesus has endured the betrayal, the abandonment, the torture, the lies, the beatings. He has been taken to Calvary. He has been hung on the cross. Right to the very end here in Luke 23, verse 46, says that Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last. And to me, this is just faith and trust in God. So he says, I commit. Who is someone that you would just say to, man, I commit my spirit to you. I trust you completely. It's like, I think of the fall trust, the trust fall, where you stand up and you just fall back, trusting that someone's going to catch you. And this is the idea, I think, that Jesus is communicating when he says, I commit my spirit. He's saying, Father, I trust you completely. So we see that he recognizes that from early in his ministry that he's not doing anything by himself. The Father's always with him. He submits himself to God's will and says, God, if this is your will, I'm going to go through with it. And then he just completely, he committed his spirit to God. And to me, that's just a complete show of his trust, his confidence, and this intimate relationship that he has with the Father. And I think those are the types of things that help us through difficult situations as well. And despite the fact that Jesus was fully God, he was also he was also fully man, and he had to recognize that God was with him, that God's will was best for him, and then just put a complete trust in the Father. And I think those are things that are going to take us through difficult times. So as I said earlier, some of you just joining, it's a time of shelter in place. Hopefully this weekend will be a little bit slower than maybe some Easter weekends have been for you in the past. And you'll really take a few minutes to reflect on, one, the magnitude of what Jesus did for us, but then also his recognition that God was with him, that God's will was best, and he was going to completely trust in God no matter the situation. Those were the types of thinking that got Jesus through all the way to the cross. And of course, we have this great anticipation that even though Jesus died and was buried, that he rose again. And of course, that's what our Easter morning celebration is going to be all about. So that's about all that I had for you this morning. I am going to share in the comments as soon as I shut this out, I'm going to share a link to a song called Whole Heart, and it just talks about your experience as a believer, and it talks a little bit about salvation, but then the chorus says, "So here I stand, high in surrender, I need you now. Hold my heart, now and forever, my soul cries out." And I think the chorus of this song, really the whole song, really just sort of captures this idea of that God is with us, heart now and forever. It catches the idea that we need to accept God's life and just completely trust Him, where it says, "High in surrender, I need you now." So to me, this song's just a great encouragement, but it also just reminds me and makes me think about, man, some of these thoughts and these truths conveyed in this song. They speak about our salvation, but it also speaks of an attitude of surrender and being yielded to God. And I think those are some of the things that got Jesus through to the cross for us. And so while Good Friday is a time of remembering Jesus' suffering and being thankful for those things, remember Sunday's coming. Somebody put that, I think it might have been Pat Strickland, put in the comments, today's Friday, but Sunday is coming. It is coming, so let's make sure that this weekend we're thinking about what God's done for us, but also just realizing that Jesus recognized that God was with him. He was surrendered to God's will, and he had complete trust in the Father. And those are the things that are going to get us through difficult situations as well. So I pray that today's a day of reflection for each one of us. And of course, that Sunday will be a day of great celebration for each of us as well. Also, just wanted to let you know, we'll be posting on Facebook. I forgot to mention it in the announcement yesterday. We will be doing communion on Easter Sunday as a church family. So as you're gathering for the online service, be sure to collect some crackers or some bread and some juice so that you can partake in a time of communion with us on Sunday morning. Love you guys. Happy Easter.